All right, good afternoon or good morning to you guys, wherever you are watching in the world. Welcome to the Backmarkers F1 show live stream for 2023 F1 winter testing. We are doing the session number 2 of the day here on the Backmarkers F1 show channel. And I'm very excited to have a couple of special guests here today with me. I've got Shaker from the Backmarkers F1 show podcast who will be in just a few minutes. But more importantly, we've got a very special guest in here with us today. Mirko from F1 Data Analysis on Twitter is joining us here, and I think maybe making one of your YouTube debuts here, but we appreciate your company. And how are you doing today?
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, I'm very excited that I'm joining this stream, and also that in general Formula One is restarting again. Because I was really looking forward all the new data for the data themselves, so just not to get too rusty with my analysis skills, and also especially because I was curious about the performance, but also the specific characteristics of each car, like had Red Bull increased their downforce finally, or had Ferrari solved their high drag problems, and so on. So we will have surely a lot of talking points today based on the data we already have so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been following along with your data, and I was even in the morning stream talking about it a little bit with some of your posts, guys. So if you're new to Mirko's work, it is at F1 Data Analysis on Twitter. We have it there in the middle of your screen. So please do go give him a follow after this stream. And I'm sure he'll have a lot more great analyses coming on the way. But I guess just quickly before we dive into all the numbers and everything, I'm just curious to your background. I know obviously you've been an F1 fan, but you have a lot of knowledge and expertise in data and telemetry and analyzing these things. So what is your background, and how did you use that background to start this Twitter account?
Yes, so I've been a lifelong, let's say, Formula One fan since 2010, when I was very young, only 14. That is the first season I remember that I watched completely race by race, by keeping track of all the points and so on. Previously, I only looked at some races sparingly. And then through my education and career, I gathered a lot of expertise in the field. I'm a mechanical engineer. I did the Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, and also the Master of Science, mostly focused on the road vehicles. And then I'm currently doing a PhD on motorcycle dynamics, which covers, I would say, in general, the dynamics of all the vehicles. Once you are able to describe one type of road vehicle, like a three-wheeler or a car, you are more or less able to describe two-wheelers as well, and vice versa. So first, with my Formula Sci experience, which is an experience in designing a open-wheeler car, okay, made by students. So it's a group of engineering students which design, build, and race a sort of a little Formula One car, okay? So I started with the four-wheelers, and then due to my PhD, I also expanded on to the wheelers. And in general, I always loved the physics, the mechanics, and the data visualization and data science aspects of mechanical engineering. It's something not so common, because the majority of mechanical engineers love to design, and especially design, and not looking at data or programming and so on. But I have my own niche, and I'm really appreciating that. And I see that people are appreciating that as well.
Yeah, they definitely are. I think we've certainly been enjoying your work and the analysis, and we're going to dive right into the numbers in just a second. I see that Shaker from the Backmarkers F1 Show podcast is also here joining us. Good morning to you, Shaker, from Ottawa, Canada. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Doing good, good. Very glad to have you along here as well. This is going to be a good stream here coming in day 3. So just before we jump into Mirko's analysis, he's done some really interesting analyses of some of the day 2 data and telemetry, and we'll get his thoughts on the day 3 action as well. Just a quick update on the runs so far this morning. Charles Leclerc's time of a 1:31.0, still the fastest so far here on day 3 in testing. He set that on the C4 tire. His teammate Carlos Sainz, who's now in the car for the afternoon, has taken over, and he's in P2 at the moment. That time set on the C4 tire as well. Sergio Perez is in for the Red Bull all day today on that C3. Happy to announce that Valtteri Bottas is back out on the track after grumbling down to a halt at turn 8 during the AM session. He had some sort of a gearbox engine issue, Alfa Romeo getting that changed earlier on in the day, and he's back out onto the track. Lando Norris in for McLaren today, and Yuki Tsunoda also taking over in for the AlphaTauri. He's down in 13th place. We're going to do a more full update later on in the show as we go. 2 hours and 24 minutes remaining in this session. So why don't we dive a little bit in between the numbers here? And Mirko, I wanted to bring up one of your tweets here that you posted this morning, and it was a data analysis of the way that three cars, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes, are approaching the corners. And I'll just read the tweet out here for you guys. Mirko is saying, in terms of top speed, Ferrari and Red Bull and Mercedes, the Mercedes is suffering from very high drag due to the big rear wing. Leclerc is lifting and brakes a lot and the latest, but sacrifices the minimum cornering speed that way. And I've been noticing in some of your tweets that you've been saying that the Red Bull is really has a lot of downforce in the corners and is able to make up a lot of time in there. So just in the first few days of running, what have you really noticed between, let's just stick on the top three teams for now, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes? Who do you think is the fastest out of the three, and which team do you think is in the most trouble at the moment?
Yes, so I only base myself on the first and second day because I like to look at the data and not live, but when they are available at the end of the session. So I will just consider the first 2 days. But based on the first 2 days, Red Bull is the clear favorite. Okay. At the same time, Ferrari is probably the team compared to Red Bull, which has more to gain because they showed more problems, and also they were really testing extreme setups in the very first day. They went very low on the ground with the setup, very stiff. They also had some problems with the front wing. So they were really testing the boundaries and understanding their car. Based on the second day, which should be a bit more representative, on which this analysis is based, we can see that the Red Bull is an ideal car, let's say, because it has a lot of downforce, okay, at least with this wing, but at the same time, they have a very good top speed. The Ferrari has an impressive top speed. It has very low drag, especially compared to last year, but this is also due to the very skinny rear wing they used so far.
Yep.
At the same time, it's not entirely due to the wing, because the top speed advantage over the previous year, which is 10 kilometers per hour, based on qualifying in which the power is also higher, okay? We can say that the car itself is also less drag. But the rear wing surely helped in improving the top speed. At the same time, however, that rear wing is surely too low downforce for this track. It's not appropriate for this track. Maybe they were trying some setups for other tracks, okay? But it's not the ideal wing here. Yep. Not even maybe in qualifying, surely not in the race, because we also saw, as I showed, that the tire degradation on the Ferrari was very, very bad, especially on the softer tires. But that is not something which should make people, make Ferrari fans go crazy, because the rear wing they were using is not the wing they will use in the race here. And the same is true for on the opposite side for Mercedes, because Mercedes ran a very, very high downforce wing, and especially a wing which has a lot of camber and angle of attack on the lower plane, which does not get reduced due to the DRS. Okay, so they were very slow on the straights. And while Ferrari will increase the rear load come the race, Mercedes already said that they will use a slightly lower downforce wing. However, what I have to say is that Ferrari will probably solve this tire degradation problem thanks to this new wing, and also today they seem to be more balanced, okay?
Yep.
What is really frightening for the team is Mercedes, because even though Mercedes was running a very high downforce rear wing, and so their top speed was very low. At the same time, they were not the best in the high-speed corners. It was still Red Bull who had the highest cornering accelerations. And this is concerning because it means that if they reduce the rear wing, their grip will become worse with probably a small increase in the top speed. So I have to say that overall, Red Bull is the best car. It looks to be the best car. Ferrari can be equal or worse. How close depends on how much do they improve, okay, based on their understanding of the car and so on. While Mercedes is clearly worse than the two. They could even be close to the Aston Martin. The Aston Martin, based on what I saw, could be very close to Mercedes, but Mercedes surely is not close to Ferrari and Red Bull, especially in qualifying.
Well, excellent explanation. Thank you for that. And that is a great way to move on to the next topic because I wanted to chat Aston Martin with you. And guys, I guess maybe Shaker, if you can just keep an eye out for the live chat here. Guys, if you have any questions for Mirko in terms of his analysis and any more technical connections, certainly me and Shaker cannot answer those questions as well as Mirko can. So please do use this time to ask those in the live chat and we will keep an eye out for those and ask him that. But you had a tweet here. I'm just trying to look for it on Aston Martin as well. So what do you think of Aston Martin? We had Fernando Alonso finishing in the top 5 in both days so far. He's currently running 5th at the moment as well. Some very good lap times, especially on day 1, finishing in P2. And I was even reading some news in the pit lane. One engineer was telling the German publication Amus exactly what you just said, that Aston Martin could potentially even be at the level of Mercedes, if not quicker. So judging from your expertise and your analysis of the data, do you think that's true? Do you think the Aston Martin could potentially be as good as the Mercedes?
Yes, potentially, yes, at least in the very first races. But if I had to bet my money, I would still bet them on Mercedes because it's a much more experienced team with more resources and so on. I think that the potential of the Mercedes is higher, but they are having far more problems than Aston Martin. So Aston Martin have a good package, and so far they seem to be understanding it very well. At the same time, Mercedes probably has a higher ceiling, but they had a lot of problems like downforce loss suddenly yesterday for no apparent reason. They were oversteering out of the slow corners, so they really were not able to set a very good time. But at the same time, this is concerning because they are not really understanding their car, which was also the case for most of the previous season. So I would have expected, after the great improvement they had in the very last races, that they finally understood their car. But it seems that every time there's a new car, there are new problems. So I think potentially, yes, Aston Martin could be close to Mercedes, but I would expect, of course, I would say Mercedes to end in front of Aston Martin at the end of the season. That, for me, is almost sure. But what was interesting was that, based on what I saw, okay, I did not do a very detailed and let's say, dedicated analysis, but based on many plots I made, like the one especially on throttle usage and also the lateral accelerations, what I saw was that the Aston Martin was surely not running the engine harder than Mercedes. That I can exclude, I would say, with certainty. It's also possible that Mercedes had a slightly higher engine mode, maybe to test some problems or to see the behavior of the car when really extracting all the power from the engine, because porpoising and other problems are magnified by a more powerful engine because you reach higher speeds and so on. So based on the fact that Mercedes was quite fast compared to Red Bull and Ferrari on the very first part of the straight, which means that they had very good energy deployment and power, and based on the fact that the Aston Martin was able to use the throttle much more during the lap, okay, this means that the Aston Martin can potentially have better grip than Mercedes, and at the same time that Mercedes could be running with a slightly higher power than Ferrari and Red Bull. So I think that so far the tests have not been very positive for Mercedes. I don't see them challenging the top two in the first races, but it all remains to be seen, especially whether Ferrari is close to Red Bull or meshed, I would say, and how close is Aston Martin to Mercedes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very interesting. And just to finish on Aston Martin, I'll post up one of your tweets from yesterday as well, which was the lap time change between 2023 day 2 testing versus 2022 qualifying plus the tire. And very interesting that on the C3 tire, Aston Martin 5/10 quicker on day 2 of 2023 testing than they were in qualifying in 2022, which just goes to show what you were just talking about there about the improvements that they made. So yeah, we've been impressed by Aston Martin through these first 3 days. So it's nice to hear that some of the pace that they're showing early on might actually end up being for real. But we'll see next week exactly how close they are to the likes of Mercedes. Now, before we go on to the next topic, Shaker, do we have any chats or coming in? I noticed a couple here, but I wasn't able to pay attention to all of them.
Not so much questions, but a couple people have made comments. They said Swen said last year's testing saw the fastest time in 1.3.17 on C5 by Verstappen, and that went slightly faster already yesterday, I think. And it's basically on his comment saying, the F1 cars seem a little bit faster this year compared to last year. And then Freakazoid mentioned that Ferrari brought in a new rear wing today. And they should also be working on like the mechanical setup as well, so we might see a little bit more from them. And then just what you guys kind of talked about. They're talking about the pace of the Aston Martin.
Okay, cool. Yeah, guys, keep them coming if you have any more specific questions here. There is the shot of their rear wings here, just in the middle of your screen that I'll post there. And Mirko was just talking about that as well. Ferrari brought in the lower downforce rear wing earlier on in the morning. And here you see in the tweet that you have Mercedes that was running the more higher downforce rear wing. Then you had Alfa Romeo that was kind of running the medium to high downforce, and all of the others were really running the medium downforce as well. Alpine ended up switching to a lower downforce rear wing too, and it ended up getting Gasly into the top 5 in that AM session. So just a quick update before we move on into some more questions. We still got the 2 Ferraris, 1 and 2 out front. Carlos Sainz completing 27 laps so far in this PM session. George Russell in P3. Sergio Perez in 4th with 102 laps on the board. Fernando Alonso currently P5. He was out on the track just a few minutes ago. 16 laps on the board for him. So that's your top 5. We'll do a more comprehensive update in just a little bit. So a very interesting development so far. Now, Mirko, if we go a little bit further down into the grid, obviously we covered Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, the favorites there. Now, what about the rest of the midfield? I always find the midfield is kind of the hardest to read because we've seen some decent pace from the likes of Alfa Romeo, for example, but they've had a lot of little technical issues. McLaren have had a lot of issues as well, particularly with their brakes in the front end of the car. AlphaTauri has been doing a lot of really long runs, so we haven't seen much of their pace. And a team like Alpine, for example, has been very quiet and hasn't shown us much. So in the midfield there, who has been some teams that have impressed you and who are some teams that worry you at this point?
Okay, so I would divide the midfield in 3, let's say, levels. Based on what I saw so far. So there is, in my opinion, Aston Martin, which is clearly in front of the others. Then you have like the big part of the midfield with, I would say, Alfa Romeo, Alpine, and McLaren, okay? Mm-hmm. And then you have the backmarkers, let's say, which could be Haas, Williams, and AlphaTauri. For example, I had relatively high expectations for Alpine because they were really able to do a good season last year, and especially they improved throughout the season. They had a lot of reliability problems, but the pace was always very good, especially in the fast tracks, but also in the slower ones. So it was a really complete car performance-wise, and also they brought a lot of updates. I think it was the team that brought the most updates. So, and every time the updates worked. So when I saw the new car and I saw it was very similar to the last evolution of their last year's car, I thought that, okay, this team understood their previous car, so they will make a clear step with this evolution.
Yep.
At the same time, in the test, they did not show much, I have to say. In the very first day, they did not even use the DRS, so it's hard to predict their performance. In my opinion, they are the fifth best car. I would say behind the Aston Martin, but in front of the other cars. Then there are the McLaren, which they admitted that they did not reach the goals they placed for themselves during the winter. So they have some performance goals related to, I would expect, downforce, drag, and in general, the lap times. And they said that they did not reach those levels.
Yep.
And this is a clear indication, okay? Because it means that that team fared worse than expected. This does not tell you where they are now in the order, but expecting that the teams on average will reach their expectations. Some will exceed them, some will be worse. I think that McLaren will not be better than last year. So they finished fifth last year, and they will finish fifth at best this year. Of course, basing this consideration on the starting car, so the updates can change a bit of everything. So they will finish fifth at best, possibly sixth, okay, behind the Alpine. Other cars, the Alfa Romeo proved to be very competitive. They had very, very good mechanical grid. They also did some runs with the C5 tire, which surely helps. But compared to the Williams, for example, which also did the laps with the C5 tire, they were always quite a bit faster. And also, they also had a lot of mechanical grip more than the Williams, even though also the Williams used the softest tire. Mm-hmm. So the Alfa Romeo seems a very, very good car as well, as it was last year, especially in the beginning. I think that also the Haas, which I would place in the back markers field, is not bad, okay? It's, in my opinion, clearly better than the Alpha Tauri. The Williams is a bit of, let's say, a question mark, okay? Because as last year, they were very different in performance based on the track. They had very, very low drag. It was the lowest drag car out of all the field, but the downforce was terrible. So on Monza, they did very well. On more urban tracks, they were quite bad. So they are hard to describe, while the Haas is more, let's say, equilibrated. I would say that the car that so far impressed me the least is the Alpha Tauri, because they never showed the very good pace. The car itself is not so radical, or it's not even an evolution of the previous year's car. So if it's an evolution, it means that the car is confident with what they did last year.
Yep.
At the same time, if the car has radical changes, it means that maybe they found something, okay? So maybe they are not able to make it work. But if they do, they have high potential. But in the Alpha Tauri case, they got some ideas from other teams, but at the same time, the car feels very plain. So it remains to be seen. Also today, there was a news by Toby Gruner about, in general, the Alpha Tauri team with Red Bull, who is considering selling the team. So that also does not help the team concerning continuity, budget, and in general vision. So this is in general my, let's say, picking order so far, but it could change a bit after this third day.
Yeah, excellent. Great analysis. And just as you were talking about AlphaTauri there, I'm glad you brought that up. I saw the exact same post from Toby Gruner, and it's up in the middle of your screen now there for guys. So yeah, the news about AlphaTauri, the new Red Bull management, of course, after the death of Dietrich Mateschitz last year, determined that the results and the marketing value doesn't justify the high costs. So the team either has to move to England or it could be sold. And of course, AlphaTauri, for those who don't know, are based in Faenza, Italy, and they are, of course, a Formula One second Italian team. And just further down, I think there was a little bit more of from Toby's tweet about who the potential buyers could be for AlphaTauri. I think Andretti F1 was also mentioned in his tweet, just loading it here. So 3 potential buyers interested in AlphaTauri. Those could be the same candidates that have officially applied for an F1 entry in 2025, which is Andretti, High Tech GP, and an Indian billionaire who owns the Mumbai Falcons racing team. So yeah, very interesting developments at AlphaTauri. What do you think is going to happen with AlphaTauri? Do you think they'll end up selling, or will we see them on the grid in the future?
Well, we will surely see them onto the grid in the future, but maybe in a different way. Okay, Formula also due to the structure of joining Formula One, it's very hard for a team to leave or to enter the competition because there are very high fees, which are called the anti-dilution fees, which each new team must pay in order to start being a Formula One team. So for those that want to get involved in Formula One, it's always much better to buy an existing team instead of starting from scratch. Also because they get all the stuff, so they can lay off some people, they can hire some others, but overall they will have a structure in place from which to start. And at the same time, it's a big savings because it's like 150 millions. They are also talking about increasing this fee for entering the competition. In my opinion, it's something also a bit crazy because it really prevents new teams from joining. But at the same time, it has also it also makes sense because otherwise teams could start and after 3 years leave with all the obligations they have with engine manufacturers and so on. So it's a bit of a delicate aspect. But for example, as the Aston Martin was Racing Point, which was Force India and so on,
Yep.
or as AlphaTauri was Minardi and so on. For us fans, okay, it doesn't change as much whether a team changes its owner. Okay, there are some historical teams like, I don't know, Williams, Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, which have a very, let's say, deep fan base based on the team itself. So it would be terrible if I don't know, Ferrari or Williams or McLaren changed their names, their colors, and so on. But for a team like AlphaTauri, there is no, I would say, there are not many people who support specifically AlphaTauri. Maybe they like the drivers, they support the Red Bull family in general. I don't know, maybe they also like what they sell as clothes, but there are not many people who really support the team for its name. So as it survived going from Minardi to Toro Rosso to AlphaTauri, they will also survive another change of property. I think what is more interesting is how will things change for Red Bull, because AlphaTauri is a B team of Red Bull. So also for Honda, Red Bull could use the Honda engine with no problems, let's say, because they forced or let's say made AlphaTauri take the engine 1 year before. So they had one team to experiment everything they want.
No.
If they lose the team, they won't have that opportunity. So also in 2019, when this happened, Honda changed a lot of engines because that was useful for Red Bull. It's not a problem if AlphaTauri loses one place in the championship. It is instead if Red Bull does not win the championship because you are not able to experiment. So I think what could be affected the most is Red Bull more than AlphaTauri itself, which is not very competitive as well in these seasons.
There's a couple of questions. One, just based on what you said. You mentioned Honda, possibly them Honda still using Honda's engine still. Could you see Honda buying out AlphaTauri? That question is from P. Arnold.
Well, it's not really my field, let's say. I mostly talk about the technical aspects of Formula One, but of course I also follow everything which is around the Formula One in general. So it's a bit strange because Honda first wanted to retire completely from Formula One. Then they saw that they started winning, and so they decided to remain. So it really depends. I don't see in general much vision in Honda, okay, compared, for instance, to other engine manufacturers like Mercedes, who started developing the engine much sooner than the other teams and were always at the top of the game. McLaren in the first years tried many different things and none worked. Then after some years they started working much better, but at the same time they were not very confident on their work and wanted to retire. So I don't know if their willingness of getting involved will change. They could buy AlphaTauri potentially, but I don't see that because we are also talking about deals between Red Bull and Ford. So I don't see that as a clear possibility, honestly.
Great. Any more there, Shaker, questions before?
Few more, and I'm gonna relate it to you talked about McLaren. Swen's question is, what do you make of comments of McLaren's Zach Brown about them not meeting their testing goals?
Well, it's quite clear. It's not common for a team principal or technical director to admit that they are missing their targets. Also because it's not good for sponsors. Especially at the beginning of the season, you really have to get as many sponsorships as possible to make your development sustainable financially and so on. So admitting this means that the team knows that they cannot I don't know, respect the expectations that sponsors and fans and so on and drivers also have. And so they say that so that in case the performance is somewhat good, at least there is a positive news, okay? And in case it goes as expected, it's not a very bad news because people are already prepared. But in general, if a team says that the car is not equal to the expectation, it's mostly true. Unless it's, I don't know, sometimes very often Toto Wolff or Hamilton about the car on the Friday in the previous years when they say that the car is not performing well and they are the underdogs. Okay, in that case, it could not be true. But in general, when it refers to an entire car in general, like the Mercedes of the previous year or the Ferrari in 2010, 2020, or now the McLaren, it tends to be true. It means that there are some fundamental problems. They can solve them, but they start with this disadvantage for sure.
Yeah, and I think we saw that a little bit in Mercedes last year, saying that they're not meeting their expectations, and they kind of met them a little bit more halfway through the season. Then the last question, this one is a little bit more of a technical one, and I feel like you're going to take a little bit longer on it, so I saved it till the end. But it's from Suman Champa. Can you explain how different drag and downforce setups are done by teams for different tracks and why?
Okay, so first I answer the why part. So there is a trade-off between having a car which is able to reach high speeds and a car who is able to corner fast. This is simply because Formula One cars, differently from road cars, have wings and a diffuser and floors, which produce downforce. The downforce is simply the force that pushes the car onto the track and provides a lot of additional grip. Okay. For concerning the floor and the diffuser, this is not changed by the team from track to track, but the team can change the angle of attack, so the incidence and also the camber. So let's say the curvature of the front and rear wings to if they increase it, to have additional downforce at the expense of additional drag. So there are some tracks like Monza. Okay, let's say an average track like could be, I don't know, Bahrain, okay, where teams use mostly medium downforce wings, okay, because it has medium speed, the cornering properties. Then there are some tracks like Monza is the extreme case, in which you really have to reduce the drag as much as possible because you spend so much time going full throttle on the straights that it's really worth it to have a car which is able to move faster through the air. At the same time, by using very skinny wings, you lose time in the corners, but in Monza there are like, I don't know, 6 corners which are not taken at full throttle. So you really lose little time. So for very fast tracks with very high top speeds and very high full throttle percentages, it's really worthwhile to pursue lower downforce with the wings, mainly because you want a lower drag. You also get lower downforce in return, but it's not such a big deal. At the same time, there are, on the opposite side of the spectrum, some tracks like Monaco, for which you really want all the downforce that you can. You get a lot of drag because they really run huge wings, okay? But it's not a problem because in Monaco, you very rarely go over 250 kilometers per hour. So yes, you get more drag, but you lose just a few tenths. And at the same time, having more downforce is really crucial to extract all the grip that you need in an urban circuit. At the same time, on slower tracks like Monaco, it's very hard to keep the temperature on the tires. So having more downforce pushes the tire onto the track, and this also heats up the tires, and it's also good for qualifying pace and in general also to keep the tires into their operating loop. So how do they change now that we know that there are different drag and also downforce levels for different circuits, how do teams change this equilibrium? They do that, as I said, mostly due to the rear wing, okay, which is also very evident. You can see the wing level of a Formula One car just by looking at the rear wing. They can change the lower or upper plane. The upper plane is the one which moves under the DRS. The lower plane is fixed. Of course, after one is changed, also the other one most of the time must be changed in order for the wing to still behave the best way. And at the same time, after there is a change on the rear wing, teams often change the incidence of the front wing to have a balanced car aerodynamically. Otherwise, at high speeds, when the downforce is important the most, you could have a very oversteering or understeering car. So let's say that teams run the skinniest rear wing they can, compatible with the tire wear and grip, and then they adapt the front wing to get the balance. They base their drag levels on the rear wing and not the front wing, just because it's the rear wing which produces most of the drag. The front wing doesn't produce much.
Yep.
So that is my explanation, let's say. And you can see that from this image. For instance, the car with the lowest downforce wing was the Ferrari, while the car with the highest downforce was the Mercedes. You can see that the upper plane, the upper wing, let's say, it's quite similar. Okay, it's not too different, but the lower plane is much different. You can see that in the, let's say, rightmost and leftmost part of the lower plane, the Mercedes has this very thick profile which extends across all the wing, while the one by Ferrari really slopes upward. So you can see that the wing by Mercedes has a much higher area, and so it acts like a parachute, slowing the car down on the streets. And we saw that from the data, because the Ferrari did 328, while the Mercedes did 315 onto the straight. So it's a 13 kilometers per hour top speed difference, which is huge, and is in most part due to the different wings they were running. And also the tire wear by Ferrari was due to the very light downforce they had on the rear. So the car was, let's say, slipping at the rear in the fast corners, and this really hampered their race pace. But they should have improved the situation by switching to a slightly more high downforce wing today.
Excellent, great, and great questions there, guys. There's a lot of people who are just new to the sport as well, so they're not sure of some of the technical details and everything, and that was a great explanation there. So yeah, we've seen a different handful of setups from all the teams through testing, and we're going to see that more throughout the season, and plenty of different tracks that we're going to in 2023 with a record calendar ahead of us, so that's great. So we're going to continue on the technical conversation in just a minute. We'll just do a quick update on the action that we've seen so far. Just under 2 hours to go here on day 3 in the PM session. Still at the top of the leaderboard, you have a 1-2 for Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, P1, followed by Carlos Sainz. George Russell in the Mercedes, his time from this morning still stands in third. For Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso, a good solid P4 showing so far. Sergio Perez in the Red Bull, 105 laps on the board. He's there in 5th place. Lewis Hamilton, who's taking over in the PM session for Mercedes, he's in 6th place. Lando Norris for McLaren is in the top 10, currently P8 with 17 laps on the board. Alex Albon, he's doing the entire day for Williams. He's got 114 laps on the board, good enough for P10. Esteban Ocon for Alpine, down in 12th place at the moment. Yuki Tsunoda, 13th for Alpha Tauri. Valtteri Bottas, he's also got the whole day to himself for Alfa Romeo, back in 15th place. Kevin Magnussen in 16th place, and then of course De Vries from this morning, he's sitting in P17. So smooth running so far from all the teams. We haven't gotten any red flags yet in this session, or any other of the different issues that we've seen maybe in the previous days. So thanks you everybody for joining along here on this day 3. We got Chris Cato, myself, Shaker Barty from the Backmarkers F1 show, and joining us our special guest Mirko from F1 Data Analysis on Twitter. Make sure you guys give him a follow. We'll be posting all of his links in the description of this video below. Now I wanted to talk about one of your other tweets that you posted here about the 2022 contenders, and you posted this from day 2. An excellent little graph just showing the differences between Verstappen, Leclerc, and Russell's time here. And we see that Verstappen and his lap in particular here was quicker 40.4% of the lap versus Charles Leclerc, who was quickest 37.8% of the lap. But I just found it really interesting to see where they were quicker. And this goes back to our earlier conversation and what you were talking about, how the RB19 has plenty of grip and really good efficient downforce. And of course, Ferrari with their top speed, you can really see here in Sector 1 on the main straight, really quicker here. So do you think that Ferrari are still going to retain some of the qualities of their car from last season, which was really good and strong out of the acceleration zones? But I'm more actually curious on the Ferrari topic of, do you think that they'll be able to solve those tire degradation issues from 2022? Because we've seen Ferrari doing a lot of different setup work earlier on in the first 2 days of testing. And I was even reading Charles Leclerc saying that he had to kind of change his driving style because the car is different this year to last year. So do you think Ferrari will be able to get rid of those problems for this season?
Well, they must get better concerning these problems, because if you don't solve tire degradation, you can be as fast as you want, but the marginally slower car will wait after your car for 10 laps, and then when your tires will have dropped off, it will overtake you with no problem. So it's crucial to have very good tire degradation, and they must improve it. There are 2 reasons. Ferrari had very bad tire degradation last year in the second part of the year. One was the new technical directive, which impacted Ferrari more than other teams. That's one reason. And the other thing is that they really had to turn down the engine after the reliability problem they faced.
Mm-hmm.
So they could not use the higher downforce wings anymore. So like in Bahrain last year, you really saw an impressive acceleration by the Ferrari in qualifying. It was clearly better than the Red Bull in that aspects. But at the same time, they were running a more loaded rear wing. So they did not have a very good top speed, but they had excellent acceleration and excellent tire wear due to the more loaded rear wing. Towards the end of the year, when they had to detune the engine, they could not use the high downforce wings anymore. So they had to use more skinnier wings, and that also damaged their race pace and tire degradation. So it really depends also on how much does Ferrari improve their engine. If they solve their reliability problems and can run the engine at full power, and also on top of that they bring additional performance improvement. So if they really make a big step engine wise, they will afford to run very loaded rear wings, and so to have a very good tire degradation as well. That was also the case of Mercedes in all the first part of the hybrid era. They had such a strong engine that they could run loaded wings even in Monza. So even though the grip was not on the level of Red Bull, for example, they still had excellent cornering because they could afford to run very loaded rear wings. And at the same time, they had very good tire degradation. So this Formula One era, the V6 era, is really a power unit era. So the team with the best power unit is really advantaged because they can trade off the straight line speed to get better cornering and tire degradation. So it much depends on what Ferrari does concerning the engine. But at the same time, if they also improve the mechanical side of the setup and if they are able to run more loaded wings, also because the car should have less drag than the one from 1 year before, then they could have better tire wear for sure. But as of now, I don't see any evidence that Ferrari really improved in this regard. While they could have improved their engine compared to at least the end of last year. If Ferrari has the same engine compared to the competition that they had in the first part of last year, then they are in a very good position for fighting for wins and for the championship.
All right, good to know. Striker, I'll let you fire off some chats there. I noticed a couple new ones came in during that last segment. I'm just going to go and see if we've got any Twitter updates.
Yeah, for sure. So you kind of covered the loaded wing part in your analysis last time, but a couple people just had a couple more questions about the loading wing part, so I'll try to double up these questions for Akshay and Aways. And he's kind of covered your question already, you could just comment in the chat. So this is more about body loads. Obviously they want you to explain body loads a little bit more, which you already did. Ferrari's using a different wing today because of that, and then they mentioned Red Bull is gaining. Red Bull is the most gaining from DRS, followed by Ferrari, then Mercedes. This is despite Mercedes having the most loaded wing. Why is that so?
Okay, so you want me to expand a bit on this topic?
Yeah, a little bit. And like I said, if he's kind of explained it already to you guys and it's covered it already, just let me know in the comment. But I think they just want to know why Red Bull is getting more on the DRS compared to Mercedes and Ferrari.
Okay, can you share the rear wings again on the screen so I can describe the reason
Yep,
even
absolutely.
better? Okay, because I see the streaming delayed by a few seconds.
Yep, I'm just going to go and find. I think it was on your account too. I think you had reposted it, so I'll just go to your account. Oops.
And then in the meantime, while you're pulling that up, maybe you can cover this question quickly. This is not a technical one, but Swan just asked. He says, "I know it's very early, but did Oscar Piastri make the wrong move going to McLaren? He personally thought that Renault Alpine was on the right track last year. I mean, I can cover this a little bit too because it's more of a thought question than it is like an analysis question.
Yeah, yes, let's say that in my opinion, he did not. The most important thing for him was to go in Formula One. Okay, that's the most important thing because then he could prove his worth, his performance against a teammate. Um, that was the most important thing. Last year, McLaren and Alpine were not very far. Okay, the Alpine was the better car, but it also had far worse reliability. And if you look at the points at the end of the year, they were not so far. And also, McLaren was damaged by the fact that he only had one high-performing driver because Ricciardo did only a fraction of the points that Norris did. So in reality, the cars were quite close. And also this year, I don't see a clear reason why Alpine should be much, much faster than the McLaren. In my opinion, they have the better car, but it will not be a huge difference. So it was hard to understand which team was better between Alpine and McLaren. If also he could have chosen, if I could have chosen also Aston Martin, I would not have chosen Aston Martin based on the previous year. And while it seems that the team which fared the worst last year is the one who has the best chances this year. So when teams are very close, it's very hard to understand which is your best choice. So I think it's very good for him to have, let's say, to have a seat in Formula One. The specific team, as long as it's still a midfield team, is not as crucial, I would say.
Okay, I'm ready with the wings if you want to go back to that question.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect then. So if you can put, okay, yes. So concerning the effect of the DRS, okay, just for, let's say, the newer fans, you see that each wing is separated in two parts, okay? There is an higher part and then a lower part. So an upper plane and a lower plane. When the DRS activates, it's only the upper plane which moves, okay, which gets horizontal and reduces the drag. So the bigger is the upper plane compared to the lower plane, the higher will be the effect of the DRS. For example, if you look at the Red Bull, you see that the upper plane has a lot of area. It's very big. While at the same time, the frontal area of the lower plane is relatively small. It's not so big. It does not take as much air as the upper part. On the contrary, if you look at the Mercedes, you see that the upper plane is about as big as the one of the Red Bull, okay, more or less. But at the same time, they have a much, much bigger lower plane. You can see that it extends far more laterally, and also it does not trend upwards. So it's only the upper part which you lose in terms of area when you activate the DRS. The lower part stays as it is. So when the Red Bull activates the DRS, the rear wing almost disappears, okay? Because the upper part almost completely disappears, makes up most of the area. At the same time, when the Mercedes opens the DRS, most of the wing will still be retained, okay? So the DRS will act on a lower portion of the rear wing. So this means that Mercedes will have a lower effect of the DRS when it's used. And this is a problem both when fighting for position and also in qualifying when the DRS can be used in each straight. So they will suffer from this, and they also suffer from the very same problem last year as well. And it was also a strong point for Red Bull as well last year. So this did not change, it seems, from last year to this.
Okay, great. I hope that answers your question out there with the fans. I'm also just kind of keeping an eye on the chat here as well. Some repetitive questions there just on Aston Martin, which we've already covered, and some questions about who the favorites are this year, which we kind of discussed a little bit early on in the season. But I guess maybe we can go as the action continues on here. We're approaching 90 minutes left in this session. Still nothing really unchanged here. Esteban Ocon just popped up actually into 11th place on the C3 tire. Hopefully by toward the end of the session, we'll get some more soft tire runs here as Sergio Perez actually currently out on the C4 tires. So guys, keep the questions coming. If you have any technical questions still for Mirko, we can have him answer the questions while he's still here. And while we wait for some more fan chat from the people watching out there, I guess I could just ask you, maybe just as a fan, what are some of the things that you're looking out for this season? I mean, minus all of the interesting telemetry and data that we've been talking about, but just as a fan, what are you most excited about in 2023?
Well, it's exciting because the regulations are stable, so there is a big chance for the team to really improve the lap times. When the rules are stable, there is always a big jump in lap times. Of course, the floor regulations changed, but it's not such a big change. So like from 2019 to 2020, there was a big jump in lap times, okay? And also between 20 and 21, the lap times were more or less stable despite the big loss of downforce from the floor. So I expect the lap times to improve by about 1 second at least. And we also saw that in the test, because many teams are very close to their qualifying lap times already, even though they are surely not using their power unit at full power, and also they are not extracting all the grip. So this is really fascinating for fans, because we all watch Formula One because it's the fastest motorsport category in the world. As a fan, I am a Ferrari supporter, even though with my page, as you can also see maybe from the color of my hoodie, even though in my page I'm always very objective, and I don't like to, I don't know, to chat for the sake of it, or to manifest my support. I'm really, let's say, I'm on a separate level, okay, meaning that I watch what happens from the side without getting involved in an emotive way, even though I support Ferrari. So I really hope that they are able to repeat what they did in the first part of the season last year. I think they can, even though the favorites are Red Bull, but at least I hope for a close fight between the top two teams for most of the season, and the championship to be decided at the very last races. But I would say that Ferrari really surprised us with their car last year, also compared to the pre-season test, because after the test, I remember that, okay, Ferrari was, it looked like a very, very good car, but Red Bull was the favorite. But instead, in the first 5 races, the Ferrari was far better. So maybe they will surprise us again come the first or the very first races. I'm also very curious about the midfield teams, because that is always exciting and interesting. I want to know whether the Haas can be as good as it was last year at the beginning, or the Alfa Romeo, whether the Aston Martin can get close to the Mercedes or not, which will be the slowest car. So there are all these question marks which are very interesting to see and to try to answer. So I'm very excited about this season. But I would say even more for the previous season, because we had these new rules and it was all unknown also for the teams. You had completely different car designs, and you did not know which ones worked and which didn't. Like I expected before seeing the test that the zero pod design by Mercedes was an incredible innovation. But from the very first runnings, we saw that it was plagued by porpoising a lot. So we already knew that the car was probably not very good. But we all thought that they were sandbagging a bit, which was not the case in the end.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned talking about the Ferrari. I guess at the end of the day, we're all Ferrari fans, and we hope to see them do well after so many years without a championship. But it was funny because it is true. Your Twitter, it is very, of course, objective and non-biased, and you're just looking at the raw data. But I think you even posted that tweet too after you made some comments about Mercedes' struggles. You had your inbox full with Mercedes supporters, maybe not happy with you, but that's kind of normal. We've gotten plenty of that as well too. But Mercedes doing quite okay at the moment now with 90 minutes left in testing in 2023. Hamilton P3 at the moment. Russell right behind him, of course, from that AM lap this morning, but a decent lap there from Lewis Hamilton, 2/10 away from Charles Leclerc's best time so far. That was set on the C4 tire. And Shaker, I'll turn it over to you. I think we have a couple more questions there. I just, for a second, I had to do a double take. I thought we had Lando Norris in the chat room, but it's actually Nando Loris. So welcome to you, Nando.
Yeah, I saw that as well. I see somebody wrote a comment to you, so I know you've already responded to it. I had to go and translate that.
Oh, really? Was it in the...
I mean, I'm pretty sure I understand what the second word is, so I'm just not going to say it live on stream. But I'm pretty sure he just asked if you're from Tuscany or if you're Tuscan, so I'm sure you've answered that already. So one of the questions from Suman is why was the technical directive that was introduced last year affected Ferrari the most, and was Ferrari using the ground effects the most? And he also says Forza Ferrari.
I can see the question in the chat. I can find it, but I more or less understood it. So I don't know why specifically. I don't think it's a thing of using the floor the most. I think it's much more about how you use the floor and how that influences your setup window. So what I can say for sure is that Ferrari lost the most downforce due to the technical directive. And also, it was not just a downforce loss, but the setup window got much narrower. So they were not able to change, I don't know, the rear wing or the ride height as much as they wanted, as they could before. But instead, they were forced into using some specific setups. And that was a double damage to the team because the ultimate performance became worse. Okay, so in qualifying they were not as dominating as before, but they were still very, very fast. But in the race, even more, they could not tune the suspensions, for example, in the same way they could before. So that also hampered the tire wear and so on. So that's my answer, I would say.
Awesome. And then this is related to Ferrari as well. And Ferrari did make serious on-track mistakes and cost of drivers' places. Will they be more organized in 2023?
I hope so, but it's impossible to say because it's not something that you can predict. I think if I were the Ferrari team principal, I would really, let's say, investigate the procedures they followed last year because it was a clear problem. So I think they spent a lot of resources and time to try to solve these problems, to rewatch the races and so on. But the problem is that Ferrari has been doing strategy mistakes for many years, since 2014 at least. So it doesn't seem something which is solved easily. I don't know if it's a problem of the people working in the strategy or if it's a management problem, because for sure they have very competent people. After all, strategy is a technical aspect. So as they have very good technical people able to do the best car or the second best car, they should be able to develop the algorithms that allow you to take the best decisions. Maybe they are not as good at employing these decisions to act through them and to decide as a team, okay? And sometimes to listen to the driver more or instead to impose your decision on the driver. I think there is also a problem of hierarchy. So sometimes they made a decision without listening to the driver, and sometimes the driver was wrong and they had to really choose what the driver had to do, especially concerning track position. So I think it was a bit chaotic, and that was the major problem. But it's hard to predict whether or not they will solve it. I would for sure focus a lot of resources on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. These couple of technical questions. So HWK asked this early, and I think I missed it, so he's just repeating. So I'll just do this one first. Did you see the cars spray Floviz? Okay, sorry.
Floviz paint, yep.
Floviz paint to check the aero. I don't know, but the Red Bull looked beautiful, but the Mercedes looked like it had clumped up the paint. What do you think? I think he's talking about what do you think about the paint clumping up, I believe.
Yes, I'm not, let's say, I don't have the expertise to evaluate that. Let's say that as a vehicle dynamicist, I know aerodynamics as a black box, let's say. So I know what are the consequences, like you increase the wing setup, okay, you get more drag, more downforce. I more or less know how the two are related, also based on, let's say, equations, okay? But, and I can also see whether a wing has is a lower or higher downforce one, but I'm not able to read the vortices or the flows. And also aerodynamics is very, very complex. I did a course on computational fluid dynamics, and it's in crazily complex. It's unbelievable, I would say. And also it's sort of a butterfly effect. Sometimes you have a very small detail, a very small effect, which changes everything. So it's very hard to interpret the flow with and so on. There are some things which you can detect, okay? I don't know how to do that through FlowViz, but I know how to do that through ropes or through some, yes, ropes or wires, laces and so on, which is one way people designing planes or race cars use to see if a wing is stalling, because we did that with the Formula Sci team. So we put some, let's say, laces, some wires attached to the wing of the car, okay? And you could see that when the wing was stalling, these wires did not move in the flow direction anymore. So in that case, you can really see that you have a clear stalling problem, okay, with a big loss of downforce, and at the same time, often an increase on the drag, depending on how the flow is stalling. But that is a very evident phenomenon, and I don't know how to see that through the flow viz. So that's it. I have limitations.
No, that's okay. That's a good explanation. It is a very complicated field, and I think me and Shaker have learned quite a bit so far in this hour that you've been on. So just a quickly, actually, before we get to any more questions that we have, we finally got some movement here on the leaderboard. We got some quick laps coming in. A new fastest lap is on the board for the day. Lewis Hamilton just moved into P1 with a 1:30.7 on the C5 tire, 0.2 quicker than Leclerc's time that he set this morning. So we're starting to see a couple of the cars put on the set of soft tires and do some simulation runs of qualifying or some more performance-related runs. The top 7 at the moment have all set their fastest times on either the C4 or the C5 tires. So I think in the next hour or so, we should be seeing some of the teams here finally run the softest tire. I was just watching the Perez lap as well as you were doing your explanation there, Mirko, and Perez was sparking away quite a bit through the sections of turn 11 and 12, so it looks like maybe they're running that car a little bit lower, but the plank was really sparking away as he was going through the higher speed sections there. So yeah, very interesting time here as we wrap up day 3 of testing. I don't know if Shaker, if you've seen any more questions you wanted to get out there, if you have any of your own.
There is a few more, just because they're a little bit technical. I'll try and get them out. I know Mirko probably doesn't have too much time. This wasn't probably a quick. This one's related to the Ferrari one. Do you think tire drag is the biggest problem Ferrari is facing, except for strategy?
Well, for sure, it's one of the biggest problems they faced last year. And Also, another big problem that they had last year and also in the previous years is that they don't have a figure which is very strong politically. So Horner or Toto Wolff are always trying to push the rules in the wrong direction, and that is it's right, it's part of the sport. But that is not true in Ferrari's case. In particular, Binotto never pushed for investigations or other changes in their favor. So also the introduction of the technical directive and other stuff was in part due to this weakness. So also this problem produced the technical directive, which made the tire degradation worse, because they could not run the same wings or the same setups they could before. So far, it doesn't seem to me, based on the long runs I analyzed, that Ferrari solved their tire degradation problem completely. They are still inferior to Red Bull, at least in this track with these wings, but that could surely change today. And also once they go even with even more load compared to today, because even though today they used a more loaded rear wing compared to yesterday, it's still very skinny for Bahrain. Last year in Bahrain, even though their car had probably more drag, they ran a much fatter rear wing, which gave an excellent tire wear. So I think they will go in that direction even more. If they don't, maybe they can solve the tire degradation through mechanical setup, and then retain the very good top speed of the car itself.
Awesome. Thank you. And then the last technical question, I think that pretty much covers everything about Ferrari.
Everything about Formula One, I would say.
Yeah, that too.
And then if this is related to Aston Martin, we already kind of talked about this at the beginning. So I think if you just, we'll do it quickly. In one of your articles, you told maybe Aston Martin has deployed better power unit than Mercedes. What does this mean?
Well, I did not say that Aston Martin had a better power unit than Mercedes. The power unit is exactly the same. The teams can do their own ERS deployment strategies. Okay, so you have a given battery capacity. Okay, so in one lap you can use up to 4 megajoules, but you decide where to use this power. Like all at the beginning of the straight, you can share it, sacrificing something in the beginning of the straight to get some additional energy for the middle part of the straights. You can decide whatever you want about that. There are some ways to optimize this usage. Okay, there are some methods known in literature, which have been, I would say, developed by some Italian academics, which I personally know as well. But there is some uncertainty. More, let's say, less in qualifying. In qualifying, you want to use the ERS energy as soon as possible, as soon as you can, because it's more advantageous to the lap time. While in the race, you have to trade off some lap time in order to be able to defend better, and yes, in general, also to lap the cars and so on. But the engine is exactly the same. The peak power is exactly the same, and so on. What I said yesterday instead was that it was possible that Mercedes was running a higher power mode than Ferrari and Red Bull. And at the same time, it was also possible that they were running a slightly higher power mode than Aston Martin. So if that's the case, Aston Martin has something additionally in hands compared to Mercedes. So they could even gain a couple tenths from that. But I did not make let's say, a detailed analysis on that. It's just something which I inferred from all the other analysis which I did, like especially the throttle percentage analysis. You saw that Mercedes was able to use the throttle less on the straight, which is a proxy for both worse grip and often higher power. So it's
Yeah, and of course we won't know until, we see actual races throughout the season who is performing better. Um, yeah, I think that's all the questions, Chris, so far.
Okay, great.
okay.
Yeah, how are you for time there, Mirko?
It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed my time here.
Yeah, are you? Do you need to go, or do you want? If you want, you're more than welcome to stick around for more time. But if you have to go, then that's no problem as well.
Well, if there are some questions, I will answer those. Otherwise, I will leave. I will do some more analysis and maybe go for a walk because I've been in front of the computer for too many hours
Yeah.
today trying to. As you can see, my analysis production output did not stop even during this stream. There are some analysis which I think went off during these minutes just because I scheduled them previously. So I'm really working non-stop and it's very interesting. It's very also, I really enjoyed my growth this year because in less than 1 year, I reached over 96,000 followers combining Twitter and Instagram. So
Wow.
it's a big change going from someone who nobody knows to a known page in the field I love. So I really enjoy doing this, but you also have to reduce, let's say, to limit the number of hours I spend. So if there is a question, also from you, Shekhar or Chris, I will because I only answered from I only answered questions from the chat. But if you have some curiosities about the both in general Formula One or me or something else or data in general, I will try to answer.
Yeah, Shaker. Do you have any other questions there?
Uh, Man, I will probably have a lot of questions throughout the season. I'm like really into analysis as well, but I just loved having you on to get into the in-depth detail. Thank you so much. Like I say it all the time in our podcast, and I'm not an engineer, so I'm so glad you're on.
Are you a data scientist?
No, I'm not. I just really like my dad is a PhD in math, so I just really loved like grew up loving numbers. So I love like reading stuff about numbers and analysis and stuff. I just love learning about it. So it was great to have you on.
It's clear.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely something maybe in the future throughout the season we can reconnect and have you on for an episode of our podcast or doing different types of analysis as well. But it's clear why you've grown so much in the short time because you have excellent analysis and your content is very objective, just diving into the raw numbers and everything out there. So yeah, it's been really great talking to you, and I don't see any more questions in the chat. And I think I'm good for questions now. I'm sure I'm going to have a lot more as the season goes on. But make sure everybody, you guys, follow Mirko on Twitter. It is at F1 Data Analyses. He also has his link tree in there as well, so you can check him out on other social media platforms. We will be posting all of the information in the description below, and I'm sure that this won't be our last conversation here on the Backmarkers F1 show. So Mirko, I'll leave you with some final thoughts if you want to say anything before you go.
Okay, so thank you for having me. I really appreciated the, let's say, this hour we spent together. Yes, I will be available for additional streams, even though I will be very busy. So I will really have to limit, let's say, my participation in other streams, but I will try to participate at least one time through the season. So yes, in general, I'm a fan. I'm, let's say, passionate about both vehicle dynamics, data analysis, and Formula One itself. So it's very interesting also for me, everything I am doing and all the questions that came out today. So I'm really enjoying the process, and I'm really curious to look at today's data, which I will post from this evening to also tomorrow and in the next days as well. And I'm also curious about the first Q3 session of the year to finally understand which cars are behaving best and which one has less potential or more. So thank you, and see you the next time or on Twitter. Okay?
Thank you very much. Grazie mille.
Bye. Bye to the chat and to everyone who joined.
Ciao. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Ciao.
Grazie.
All right, everybody. Well, that was Mirko from F1 Data Analysis on Twitter. I'll leave that up in the middle of your screen there if you guys want to head over to Twitter and follow him there. Also, I would say follow us as well, the Backmarkers F1 Show, BMF1_show. You will find us on Twitter. We appreciate that if you follow along there. And boy, Shaker, if we would have had him on for another half an hour, we'd be out of a job.
Yeah, that was. I mean, like, I just loved hearing about all of that because, I mean, there's so many times in our podcast we get asked those technical questions and, like, we can't get into the details because obviously a lot of the time we are going to be wrong about it. So it's nice to have, because, I mean, this podcast is more for, newer people who are watching F1 and stuff. So it's nice to have all those questions and for you guys to actually understand F1 a little bit more. And same thing for us. I mean, that just... So many of those things that used to go over my head, I understand now.
Yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed the conversation, and it wasn't... You're never sure, obviously, when you reach out to people, you're not sure in terms of their comfort level for interviews and things like that. And of course, him being Italian, English is a second language, but he was fantastic. I was really impressed by him and his knowledge, and even just his on-camera presence was very good too. So hopefully we'll be able to have him back on at some point in the season, but I'll be following his work anyways. So yeah, thank you to him, and thank you to you guys as well for all your questions. We're still going on here though. There's still over an hour left of testing, and we've got plenty of more coverage to get to, and we'll actually be focusing more on the on-track action now instead of the more technical analysis, because we've got a lot of things happening in the last 15 minutes. Sergio Perez just went quickest about 5 or 6 minutes ago, a 1:30.6, and that looks like it might be beat in about 35 seconds or so. Lewis Hamilton currently going purple in Sector 1. He's just going through Turn 11 at the moment, so let's see his mini sector to see where he'll end up. But this is what I've been really waiting for since we started watching testing, is Day 3, evening session, the last hour. Are these teams going to strap on the set of softs? And let's see, get a little bit of a preview of the performance level. And we got, okay, Hamilton personal best in the middle sector. Yuki Tsunoda just popped up into 5th place, and Lewis Hamilton just exiting the final corner at the moment.
Oh, so close.
Close, yeah. Goes second quickest, Lewis Hamilton, on a set of soft tires. The C5 tire there for Hamilton. Perez, interestingly enough, set his fastest time on the C4. So that is slightly interesting there. Carlos Sainz of Ferrari set his in the C4 as well.
If you give me 10 minutes, I just have to go feed my dog, and I'm also going to go make another cup of coffee. I'll be quick.
Go ahead. I've got it covered.
I just figured we're getting into the beginning, so you're going to talk for a little bit.
Yeah, I've been talking all day, so I'm used to it. No problem.
I'll be right.
So yeah, so guys, if you are still with us in the chat, definitely let us know if you got any more questions, or more so just, I guess, predictions. What do you guys think? If you've been watching testing for the last 3 days, who has impressed you the most? Who has disappointed you the most? And has it changed any of your outlook on this season in terms of who you're expecting to be at the front of the field? But we should get a little bit more of a read on the performance runs in the next hour or so. We've got Sergio Perez out on track once again. He is on a set of the soft tires, the C4, but he isn't going quicker in any of the mini sectors at the moment. We got Kevin Magnussen just exiting the garage. He's going to be out on track in just a moment. I'll put the timing back into the middle of the screen here, and you guys can follow along. We've also got the Twitter feed going as well, so we'll be able to provide you guys with more of the updates from the pit lane that we weren't able to in the first hour or so when we were doing all of our technical analyses. So let's see, Perez will be crossing the line in just a moment, but he will not be improving on his time, although he did go purple in the final sector there. So he was on a performance run there, just made a mistake in the first 2 sectors. So if we look at the leaderboard there, guys, from P1 all the way down to P9, we've had drivers run the soft tire with their best lap, but we haven't seen the likes of Norris or Magnussen put in a lap yet on the soft tires, so it'll be interesting to see where they end up. Alex Albon hasn't done a run on the soft tires since the AM session, so he's going to need to still put in a decent lap there. And let's see, Pierre Gasly was from the morning session, so he was on the C3 tire. Esteban Ocon, we haven't seen much of yet in the PM session as well. He's on the C3, so it would be nice to see where the Alpine's the interesting one because we really haven't seen much from them. But if you were with our conversation earlier, Mirko was saying that he expects them to be about 5th place this season. Still expect them to be good because they had a good car last season and mostly just an evolution with the A523. So he's expecting them to be up there once again this season. But interesting that he also believes some of the rumors that we've been reading that Aston Martin could potentially be 4th quickest and maybe even 3rd quickest at the beginning of the season. He expects them to be having a really good car. So, I mean, it's good to hear. I definitely won't mind seeing Fernando Alonso running near the front of the field and battling the likes of his former teammate, Lewis Hamilton, and other ones as well. So we'll see. We're going to be able to find it out soon enough in 8 days' time when we go racing in Bahrain. So Kevin Magnussen for Haas, currently P10 at the moment. He is on a personal best in the first sector on the C4 tires, so we're going to get to see a little bit of the performance of the Haas VF23. We haven't seen much from Haas in terms of qualifying sims. If you guys weren't with us the first 2 days of testing, Haas have been doing mostly longer runs and gathering aerodynamic data. That was what Nico Hülkenberg was doing this morning. And on day 1 especially, Nico Hülkenberg was doing a lot of running on the Pirelli prototype tires and didn't get much of a chance to run any of the soft compounds. But now Kevin Magnussen in the seat for the PM session. He is just rounding out the final corner here on personal best. So let's see where his time will end up. And Kevin Magnussen goes 8th quickest with a 131.8, 1.2 seconds off of the top pace set by Sergio Perez of Red Bull. So this is going to get exciting, guys. Please stay with us for the next hour and so. We're going to have a lot, and I mean a lot of things to talk about here in the next hour because we're going to see different times toppling from here and there, so it should be a lot of fun. Also, later on today, you should expect the Day 3 debrief show to be uploaded on the Backmarkers F1 Show channel. I'll be bringing you a quick summary of the day's events and just the overall summary of the 3 days of testing. We are reaching the end of preseason testing already, which is pretty crazy to find out. But interesting tweet here as well, just a minute ago from racefans.net. We were just talking about Alpine, and they're saying that Alpine introducing ride height tool and visible upgrade at first race. So I noticed that was in the chat. I see a new chat coming in here, which I'll address in just a minute. But there was a chat that I remember seeing maybe a while ago now that was asking about what type of, or what is the rule or the limit on the type of upgrades that the teams can bring in from now until the first race. And as far as I know, they don't have really any limits on the amount of upgrades they can bring in. It really is dependent on the team, their development plan, their budget. I think unless if it wasn't planned already, it would be difficult to bring an all-new upgrade package to the first race because the first race is only 8 days away. Of course, that would mean that they have to fly in the parts all the way to Bahrain from their team bases in the UK. So I think that most of these teams, if they are bringing upgrades next week, they're pre-planned upgrades that they already had in the pipeline, ready to ship out as well to Bahrain because it needs to get there in time. So just I don't know if whoever asked that question, if you're in the chat, hopefully that helps and answer that there. Paranoid, I guess, interesting username. Alonso has always seemed to squeeze the most out of whatever he can drive. I just hope Stroll can keep up with him. Aston Martin have a poor second driver in Stroll. I mean, hard to agree with you on that one. It's Alonso is definitely, if you want to talk about one Formula One driver or just a race car driver in general who can always maximize the performance out of his car, it's going to be Fernando Alonso. Just think back to his season in the 2012 Ferrari. That Ferrari really had no business fighting for the championship, but in the hands of Fernando Alonso, he was able to almost become a 3-time world champion with Ferrari. Unfortunately, didn't happen for him. So yeah, I think I really enjoy watching Alonso. If you've been watching any of his onboards or even just the offboard shots, he's so aggressive behind the hands of the AMR 23, just really throwing it into the corners, fighting it a lot. But it is a good sign because he's showing that he is a little bit comfortable in that car, and the car has some potential as well. Now, in terms of Lance Stroll, it's hard to disagree with that, because Lance Stroll the last 2 seasons was a bit disappointing. He had a really good year in 2020 for Racing Point, scored his maiden pole position, scored podiums as well. But since then, when he got his new teammate in Sebastian Vettel, he lost both of those head-to-heads, which would be normal when you think, of course, for Sebastian Vettel, 4-time world champion. But I think that Vettel was obviously on his way out of Formula One and really wasn't performing at a high level as we had seen him in previous years. So I kind of expected Stroll to do better, and he wasn't able to. So I kind of think that this is really a make or break year for Lance Stroll. I know with the situation, his father owning the team, it would be hard to see him get dropped. But I think you're right. They need a more balanced driver lineup, especially if Stroll is going to not bring in the healthy amount of points. It might end up being like a Ricardo McLaren situation like we saw in the last 2 seasons. So I do believe Stroll needs to step up. Just a quick update on Lance Stroll, guys. No word yet on whether he will race in Bahrain next week, but looking unlikely that he will, because there's reports that he broke at one wrist at least, but some saying that he might have even broken both wrists. So we'll see what the update is for him. As Yuki Tsunoda, excuse me, Yuki Tsunoda just popped up into 5th place. First time we've really seen Alpha Tauri on a set of soft tires and going more for a qualifying sim. So he made that lap time on the C4. So Yuki Tsunoda up into the top 10. More questions or more comments here from Paranoid. I would like to believe Ferrari can go ahead and Red Bull will be hampered by less wind tunnel time. That's a great point there, Paranoid, and actually something that we forgot. I'm not sure if Mirko mentioned that in his discussion there, but of course the penalty for Red Bull breaching the cost cap in 2022 was the limitations in terms of wind tunnel testing time for them. And they already have the limitations because they finished first last season. But we didn't talk about that. That would have been an interesting question to ask Mirko. It certainly doesn't look like it's hampered them too much right now, because Mirko and a lot of other F1 experts are believing that Red Bull will be the team to beat, at least in the start of the season. So we'll see. Ferrari, let's see what they can do. I wouldn't even really say cautiously optimistic. They're just going to be happy if they can at least fight for the championship and win Grand Prix again. But they need to maintain the good form that they had from early on in 2022 if they want to have a chance. And another one for Paranoid here. Do you think Mercedes have made a big enough step upgrade yet and will be chasing 3rd place again? I honestly think that they're going to be chasing 3rd place again. From the analysis that Mirko gave us at the beginning of this stream, he was talking a little bit about some of the issues that Mercedes still has, and that they most likely will be the 3rd best team. And Mirko even said, and a lot of others in the paddock believe, that Aston Martin might be able to challenge Mercedes, at least in the beginning of the season. Now, the rumors are that Mercedes do have a upgrade in the pipeline and almost a quote-unquote B car that is ready to be unveiled. And that is going to be an upgrade that's going to be more along the lines of the Red Bull design. So they're thinking they might have to ditch the zero pod concept and go with something else, which I was kind of surprised that they kept their zero side pod concept for this season, because no other team really went down that route. And as well, even though Mercedes did okay with it last season, it was probably the least successful concept out of any of the new ones we saw last season. So I think Mercedes will be fighting for 3rd place this year, certainly at the beginning of the year, and we'll see what they can do as they go forward into 2023. So hopefully that answers some of your questions or concerns, but keep them coming, guys, here. The live chat is open, so please do submit all of your questions and your comments. We appreciate everybody watching along here. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We are doing a hell of a lot of content in the last couple of weeks, and of course going to be doing so much more this season, so really looking forward to it. I think we're approaching 9,400 subscribers, which is amazing. It looks like we're getting really close to 10,000, and that's going to be big once we reach that. So with your help, guys, we can make it. If you want to support the channel even more, the super chat option is available right now in the live chat. You can give us a little small donation that goes directly back into the channel. Of course, we are a very small channel here, that has been doing content for the last couple of years, and any little bit of support helps us just develop the channel. It pays for some of our expenses, and it allows us to keep producing content. So there's also some links in the description if you want to support us directly. If not, then the best way to support us is just to keep watching exactly what you're doing right now. Hit that like button on the videos to help the algorithm get our videos out there to a broader audience, and just always keep coming back and comment as well. We appreciate all the comments, and we love hearing from you guys, so continue doing that for sure. We just saw Kevin Magnussen actually pop up there to 6th place recently on a set of the soft tires, so good lap there from K-Mag. I'm just going to dive into Twitter here to see if we can get any updates from you guys from the pit lane. The live timing in the middle of your screen is updating. It's about, I think, a 30 or 40 second delay, but it's not too bad. It is still relatively up to date, so you can keep track of all the drivers doing the laps. So we will do actually an update on the laps to see which drivers have completed the most so far in this PM session. And we got the Alpine of Esteban Ocon. He's actually currently on the C1 tire, so he's just starting a hot lap at the moment. So we have a little bit of a lull or a break in the action. So let's just review the current lap leaderboard, which you can see in the middle of your screen there. Sergio Perez, of course, leading the way so far. He's done all the driving today on day 3, 117 laps on the board. Not too far behind Valtteri Bottas with 114 laps under his belt. But the leader still is actually Alex Albon in the Williams, 127 laps done for the Thai British driver. So a good haul of laps there for Alex Albon. Now, some of the other drivers in the PM session, Lewis Hamilton has done 49 laps so far. Carlos Sainz has done 59 laps in the PM session. Kevin Magnussen, 83 laps on the board. Aston Martin's Fernando Alonso has completed 52 laps so far. Lando Norris in the McLaren, only 17 laps. We haven't seen much of the McLaren. I'm going to maybe try and find out to see what we can learn about why McLaren hasn't run so much in this PM session. More issues there for McLaren, which is not a good sign. Esteban Ocon is currently out on track and on your F1 TV feeds. He's got 49 laps on the board. And of course, the rest of the drivers after him have all taken place in the AM session. So that's your update on the PM drivers here so far. In our debrief show, we'll go through the teams that completed the most laps today and, of course, the best times at the completion of this session. Going to get an update. Track temperature, 30 degrees. Much warmer today than it was in the previous 2 sessions. Air temperature at 25 degrees, but the track temperature has kind of risen a little bit then from day 1 and day 2 in the PM sessions. In the morning today, it was 42 degrees centigrade track temperature, but the fact that it's at 30 degrees means it's a little bit more. And they're showing a replay of Lando Norris just jumping over the tape that's in front of his garage, but he's out of the car, doesn't even have his helmet on. He's got his overalls off, tied around him, so it doesn't look like he's going out anytime soon. Let me see if I can find out any information for you guys as to why Lando Norris is not out on track. Tough for McLaren. They slumped back into the Constructors' Championship last year in 5th place, and some of the concerns that they had during their launch turned out to be true, and we talked about that with Mirko as well earlier on in the stream, of how McLaren essentially admitting that they have missed their development targets in the early stages of this season, and it's going to be a kind of an uphill battle for them until they get back to the front of F1. So doesn't look like their 2023 will be necessarily off to a good start, but hopefully they'll be able to rebound shortly. If you guys got any more questions or comments, if you've noticed something that maybe we missed on the feed, let us know. We're still keeping an eye out on the chat here as we look around everywhere else. I've got the Twitter feeds going as well. I guess I could show you a beautiful picture here of the Ferrari, because why not? The SF23 is a beautiful car, and it's even more beautiful under the lights in Bahrain with the sun setting. Just an absolutely beautiful picture there. Carlos Sainz in the SF23. There you have the Mercedes, the W14, looking beautiful as well under the lights. I guess we've always been asking that through these 3 days of testing. Let us know what your favorite livery is out of the 10 cars that we've seen so far in 2023. A lot of them look actually really good. But let's focus back on the track action now, because we have Sergio Perez on another hot lap so far. Personal best in the first sector and actually purple in sector 1. He is the fastest man through the first sector. He's on a fresh set of the C4 tires. And we're going to see where this lap puts him up. On his previous run, he ran quite wide there on the exit of turn 11, but he's nice and clean through there this time. No oversteer. Barreling down the back straight now, as he's purple in sector 2 as well. So it looks like this will be our fastest lap of the day. A good exit out of 15, well within track limits, although I don't think they're counting track limits in testing. And Sergio Perez goes fastest so far in this PM session and also on day 3 of testing. A 1:30.3 for the Mexican driver puts him atop the timing boards with 49 minutes remaining. A good lap there from Sergio Perez. Looks like they put on a fresh set of tires, maybe a little bit less fuel, who knows? But Perez so far quickest out of any of the 10 drivers in this session. Got a comment here from Jimmy Keller. Hello to you, Jimmy. Thanks for joining us. You got a feel for Lando. All of the McLaren messaging is so negative about their 2023 prospects. Yeah, it is. And it's honestly from their CEO, Zach Brown, too. Mirko brought up an interesting point in our conversation earlier where he said, typically team principals and CEOs of teams, they won't admit these things because it's bad for sponsorships, it's bad for public relations. And I actually haven't really even thought of that from the business side of things, that you don't really want to admit that, hey, we're not going to be as good as we thought we are ahead of the season. But Zach Brown has typically been the CEO at McLaren since he took over in 2018 to actually be quite honest about these things. He was very honest about McLaren's failed attempt in IndyCar and the Indy 500 a few years ago. I remember that very well. And he just seems like the guy who's pretty honest about his chances. He is a racer. He does come from a racing background, so it doesn't surprise me altogether that he'd just come out and be honest like that. But I guess we do appreciate that because we don't normally see in that in Formula One. Teams usually hide these things as much as they can. But it's tough. It's really tough for McLaren. If you guys weren't with us in the morning, they had some more issues on the brake drums. They had to do a little bit of repair on Oscar Piastri's car, which limited Piastri's running. He only completed 44 laps in the AM session. Just as a comparison, Nick De Vries below him completed 87 laps in that AM session. So unfortunate he didn't get very much running. And then Lando Norris in this session as well. I still don't know what is the reason why he's not out on track at the moment. Only 17 laps completed, P11 for Lando Norris. So it is disappointing because I think we were all hoping after 2021, for example, that McLaren would finally be really making that step forward closer to the top 3. And then they fell back again in 2022. A lot of issues there, of course, an unbalanced driver lineup, one of them, and also the car not being up to par. But now in 2023, we know, at least in the start of the season, the car will not be where it needs to be. So hopefully they've got a lot of upgrades planned, and that will bring them back into the fight. But they do have the new wind tunnel coming next season and the facilities upgrades. So hopefully brighter days ahead for McLaren. But I think they're in for a rough ride in 2023, especially with how some of their rivals like Aston Martin and Alpine have been looking as of late. Let me just check here. Okay, so Shaker's not back yet, so just making sure that he's not just waiting there to be brought back onto the screen. So current drivers out on track, we have Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz out on track at the moment. Kevin Magnussen just started his outlap. We have Fernando Alonso also out on track. And we just talked about Lando Norris. He is just heading out on an outlap at the moment. Good to see Lando back out on track. And Esteban Ocon out on track as well. So it looks like we got most of the cars are going to be here out on the track at the moment. And here we got some analysis here from the race's Scott Mitchell, who is currently trackside there in Bahrain. Now, this I'll have to verify, but apparently Perez with that lap is actually quicker than last year's pole time. And Scott Mitchell trackside saying, quote, Perez just came through turn 10 visibly faster than anything I've seen from here all week. So Perez certainly pushing and looking really good through some trackside angles there.
Hello?
Hey, he's back.
Sorry about that. I came back 5 minutes ago, but my microphone was kept on falling, and I just
No problem. I wasn't sure, so I just kept checking you because I just kept rambling on, and I don't know if you were just waiting there.
my dog is just to give me a difficult time in the morning. She's a princess.
That's all good. That's all good. I think the only thing you missed was Perez went quicker again.
Oh wow, good for him. What, 0.3 seconds faster? No, almost.
Yep. Yeah, almost
Yeah.
4/10. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep, he's going quick at the moment, and we got a lot of cars now out on track, so we should be seeing plenty more quali runs here as we end the day. And Lando Norris kind of getting in the way of that Alpine in the final corner. Okay, let's get the live timing back into the middle of the screen here.
It's weird seeing Haas not where as they were. I guess they're testing more longer runs today than they are for speed.
They certainly were earlier in the day. I know. I mean, 7th place from Kevin Magnussen is a decent time. Still kind of more of a second off the pace, which is more or less where you would expect to see them. But yeah, Nico Hulkenberg earlier in the day was doing a lot of long runs, and they were testing still more of their aerodynamics and everything. So Magnussen's on an outlap though at the moment. So I wonder if he's going to be on another set of the soft tires. So we'll keep an eye out for him. Okay, so currently on track, Lando Norris is on a flying lap at the moment, setting personal bests in the first two sectors. He is on the C3 tire, the medium. And we have a lot of drivers just came into the pits, actually. Hamilton, Sainz, Bottas in the pits at the moment. And Norris crosses the line, stays in 11th place, goes quicker, 132.1, but doesn't improve his standing on that C3 tire. And seeing a replay of Perez down into turn 10. And yeah, just carrying way too much speed into turn 10. He goes wide there, and he has to abandon that lap.
Oh, are we going to see him come out again? Probably for the last 15, 15, 20?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I guess maybe guys in the chat who are still watching, who, if you had to place a bet, which driver is going to finish with the fastest lap time today in this session? Because we could see maybe an Alonso in the last 2 minutes, really low fuel, fresh set of soft tires, and just bangs in the fastest lap of the day. Track temperature as well just went down a degree to 29 degrees Celsius. It was 30 before, which is quite high still for this time of evening in Bahrain.
This is kind of what we're expecting for next week at the race too, though, right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah, this is why this is some of the most important running of testing is at this time. This is her. I'm going to post this tweet. This is pretty interesting. On Fernando Alonso. So this is one of Fernando Alonso's earlier stints here. Second stint, which I think it looks like was on the C1 tire. So you want to talk about how an F1 driver gets into the zone and does his race simulation. Let's look at the lap times here. So you had 37.6, 37.8, 37.8, 37.7, 37.7, 37.6, 37.7, 37.5, 37.6, 37.5, 37.5, 37.6, 37.2, 37.2, 37.3, 37.3, 37 dead, 37.2, 37 dead, and then his in lap, which was the 39.9. So yeah, that's pretty crazy consistency. And even as you look, when he gets to the end of his stint, he puts in one of his fastest lap there's on one of the laps before he came into the pits, 37.0. So very impressive consistency there from Fernando Alonso and these drivers as well. It's pretty crazy just how they can be within just 1 or 2 tenths lap after lap after lap, not making any mistakes. So that's really impressive.
That's shows you how many years he spent in F1.
Yeah. No, let's keep that one over there.
There's a lot more porpoising issues today. Have you noticed that?
I've noticed a lot more cars sparking today. That's for sure. It's hard to tell what if it's porpoising or if it's just teams running a really low ride height and then they just kind of bumping on the ground. But I know it's not as bad as it was last year. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it seems like it's more specifically the AlphaTauri around that corner. So maybe you're right. Maybe it is just a very low ride height.
Yeah, Red Bull certainly was. When I was watching Perez's lap during Mirko's one of his technical explanations, he was really, really sparking away in the high-speed sections of turns 11 to 13. And there we go. We got another quick lap on the board, this time from Valtteri Bottas. Bring the timing back up into the middle of the screen. He moves up into P3. A solid lap there from Valtteri Bottas, 130.8 for him. And it looks like he's got past some of those issues that he had in the AM session that forced him to stop out on track. I think he's got some fresh power unit components in that back of that C43, and he's good to go now. Jimmy's prediction for the fastest lap today is that Perez will keep it. Okay, all right, we'll hold you to that prediction there, Jimmy. I'm going to go with Alonso. I'm just going to go with Alonso for this one.
I'm actually going to go with Lewis Hamilton.
Okay.
I think Lewis takes it. As much as I want Perez to keep it.
Yeah, he's not far off, though.
We all know Lewis Hamilton, does his best when it really counts. When the pressure's on.
I actually think Hamilton's about to go out onto the track, but it looks like, yeah, he's on a set of the medium tires.
It looks used medium tires, though? Definitely used.
Yeah, you're right. Scrub set of mediums. Alpine's an interesting one for me throughout these whole 3 days. I'm just watching Ocon on track at the moment, running the C1 tire. And honestly, I can't say that I've really seen the Alpine do a legit performance run. I mean, Gasly had an okay run this morning, good enough for 12th still on the day. But I just really haven't seen Alpine going for it that much. And maybe that's just because they're that confident about their package so far. But they're one of my unknowns because they haven't had a bad testing, but they haven't shown anything that's overly eye-catching. But maybe that's the goal from the team.
Yeah, you never know. And Joseph asks how far are the lap times to last year's Bahrain Q or P3. I'm taking a look right now. I will give you a quick update.
I think somebody said Perez's lap is actually quicker than last year's pole lap, but you'll let me know in a minute.
So, if we're going by qualifying, right? You asked for qualifying or P3, right? That's what they asked?
Yeah, Q3, yeah.
Okay. So in qualifying, Charles Leclerc had the pole at 130.5. And then Max with 130.6. 8-1, I have to be exact, signs is right behind him at 130.687. So it's pretty close.
Yeah, so they were right. So Perez is 2 tenths quicker than the 2022 Bahrain pole lap.
Yeah.
I think that's what Mirko was saying too, right? That he expected one of his predictions for this season was expecting quicker lap times overall. Yeah, and oh, perfect. If we would have waited an extra 30 seconds, we'd have saved you all that research. It just popped up on our F1 TV feed. Confirmation 2022 pole time 1:30.5. Sergio Perez fastest today overall 1:30.3.
I want to see Leclerc's time for what he has for P4 right now. That'd be interesting to see if he can even match his pole from last year.
Mm-hmm. So currently 6 cars out on track at the moment. Sergio Perez is out on the soft compound tire once again. It looks like this is a used set of the soft tire. It looks like he's done 5 laps on this current set, if this data is correct. 124 laps on the board for Perez. We'll do a PM update in about 5 minutes when we reach the half-hour mark. Rest of the cars out on track. We've got the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton, the Alpine of Esteban Ocon as well. Looks like Perez is pushing on this lap, though. He was only a few 100ths off of his best time in Sector 1, so we'll keep an eye out on this lap. Lando Norris also out on track for McLaren, as well as Fernando Alonso. And my stream just froze. My F1 TV feed. Hopefully not the rest of the stream, though.
I still have it, and if you see me go off camera, it's just because I have to blow my nose, and I don't want anybody to see or hear that. So.
Okay. No, okay, yeah, so it was just my F1 TV. We're still good. Good. So Perez rounding out the final corner, ran into a little bit of traffic from Lando Norris ahead. This probably will not be a quicker lap. Yeah, he's 3/10 down on his best lap there. But, I mean, even that lap, when you look at it, a 1:30.6, only a tenth and a half slower than the pole lap last season. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to talk about that in the debrief show, see if any drivers can go quicker ahead of this session. 33 minutes remaining.
Joseph, yes, the new cars are a bit faster. I mean, it's nice to see that all the other cars are kind of getting on the same par, like the same speeds as last year. Like in terms of the back markers and the mid teams. So if they can get to 131, pretty much all even, it'd be a very interesting season all over.
Yeah, definitely will be. And to add on to the Joseph's question there, the Aston Martin yesterday on day 2 on the C3, which is the medium tire, he was 6/10 quicker than Aston Martin's 2022 qualifying lap here in Bahrain. So that is 2 things right there. That's obviously shows you the progression Aston Martin has made in their own car, but also shows that this year's cars look like they will be faster. So that's good. And also keep in mind, too, that a lot of the cars last season for most of the year were severely overweight, which obviously hurts lap time a lot.
Yeah, so I think there was a delay in the stream because I think the delay went from 16 to about 20 seconds.
Oh, yeah?
But, I mean, it's 20-second delay. It's still pretty decent.
Oh, it's not bad at all. Yeah, I've got it open here, just watching it just in case there's any issues or anything, but looks like it's been going smooth so far. We had Nando Loris there a couple of minutes ago. Was worrying me there for a second about the echo and the audio. I was like, echo? I'm like, what echo? I was like, I even had to mute my mic and I was listening to it. I'm like, there's no echo. But yeah, it was an issue on his end. That was funny.
Yeah, I saw that as well. And like, I know if you guys have ever done a Zoom recording or like have tried to do your own podcast, all of our voices carry over on Zoom. We can't like just mute each other. So that was my concern that Zoom was overlaying. So luckily we're okay. I mean, if you guys ever have any technical issues and want to let us know in the chat, let us know because we can probably adjust them pretty quick.
Yep. Yeah, and we tend to miss it too because we've got 2 or 3 screens open up. you're looking back and forth from Twitter, from the TV, live chat, and everything. So yeah, and yeah, if we do, I mean, it's quieted down a little bit now, but if we do happen to have missed one of your questions or comments, just repeat it in the chat, and then we'll address it. So right now we've got Bottas out on track, fresh set of C5 tires, the softest available here for the drivers, but not going quicker at the moment than even his personal best on that one. He's currently sitting P3, 5/10 off of the pace of Sergio Perez.
So just to go on that, where we were talking about the lap qualifying times and lap times we're getting today, looks like the top 9 drivers are all between 131. So that's pretty good. That's half the drive, almost half the drivers on the grid.
Yeah.
Uh, even Aston Martin is only off by like another 0.6 seconds. So it's pretty close.
Yeah, it definitely is.
0.06.
So Bottas just about to cross the line here on one of his flying laps and doesn't go quicker. He was 7/10 off there, 131.0 on that last lap. So nothing new there in terms of changes of the leaderboard. Valtteri does have, though, let's see, 121 laps on the board for Valtteri Bottas. That is the third most today, behind 136 by Alex Albon and 125 by Sergio Perez. Of course, those three drivers have the entire day of driving to themselves, which is why their lap counts are so high. Just seeing a new comment here from Jägermeister. Great long runs by Alonso. A great consistency. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if you're referring to the tweet that we saw earlier about his lap times, but yeah, incredible consistency, and also great to see that he was even improving lap times as he got toward the end of the stint when the degradation is obviously higher. So classic Alonso being within a few tenths of a second of his average lap time. And yeah, that previous stint that he did, 21 laps on the hard tires. So that was more of a race simulation there. Of course, next Sunday at the Bahrain Grand Prix will be right around this time. So these are the best conditions to simulate a race or a qualifying run. And speaking of Alonso, he is currently out on track. And he's running a medium tire. No softs yet. My prediction is Alonso will get the fastest lap at the end of this test because he'll strap on a set of soft tires, low fuel in the last 2 minutes. That's my prediction.
It's a pretty good prediction. Does Hamilton have a chance? Do you know the pace difference of the current tire compounds?
Let's see. Let's see if we can find that on Pirelli. Good question.
While you're looking at that, I can answer. Does Hamilton have a chance to win in Bahrain? Yeah. I mean, you can't count Mercedes out. It is also the first race of the season. But I mean, you can't count them out. But I also think with how Red Bulls displayed how well their car can last on track, it's a hard one, but I think he can still do it. I think there's a lot of circumstances that have to come into play. Um, it comes down to a safety car in the last like 10, 15 laps of the race. It could be very interesting. You never know what happens in those. So yeah, he has a chance. You can't count Hamilton out ever.
Yeah, I remember at the last year's race, he wasn't even running in the podium positions, and then the two Red Bulls had their failure and ended up finishing on the podium.
You never know. Yeah, the first like 5 races, I personally find are kind of like undetermined as to who the pole winners are, and if depending on who is on pole, it might not matter when it comes to later in the season. I mean, it matters in terms of points, but you never know if the person who wins the first race of the season might not end up being the championship winner at the end. So
Yeah,
never.
yeah, that's for sure. I think there's like statistically too, the driver who wins the first race of the season typically doesn't go on to win the championship at the end of the year. There's some I can't remember what the stat was, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I can't see any of the information. Pirelli didn't provide anything in terms of the delta time difference between the different tire compounds. So I haven't seen it yet, but we will post that in the middle of the screen if I do end up finding it. But all I have right now is just the information on the tires themselves. If you guys are interested, front tire pressures 21 psi, rear tire pressures 18.5 psi. Yeah, no information on time delta there, but I'll keep looking for it in the meantime. It's a good question, though. Maybe that was a question we could have asked Mirko earlier. And this is a good question, actually, to pose to the chat room as well, as we are under 25 minutes left in 2023 F1 testing. Let us know who has had the best test, in your opinion, and who has had the worst. What do you guys think? What do you think, Shaker? Who would be your vote?
I think
Yeah, best and worst.
this is gonna sound weird, but I think McLaren have had the best test to know that they're not in the right place. And like but it's like you could also say that's the worst too. But like they know where they stand in the season, I guess. And I know it's a lot of negative comments, but that's things they should work out in testing. Michael says McLaren worst. Yeah, so I mean you could go best or worst. I personally think in terms of knowing where your car stands and what your car is doing, yeah, they know exactly what they're expected from the season, and it's shitty. They can work on it. And in terms of like, let's just say worst.
Certainly an interesting explanation. I would not look at it that way.
I think the testing is there to know where your car stands, right? And like Red Bull had really good tests at the beginning of the season last year, and like look at all the issues they had in the first 5 races of the season. So I guess like you could have counted it as good testing, and then same with Ferrari. They looked really good in testing last year, and then look where that happened. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with McLaren as worst, and then I'm gonna go with Aston Martin as best.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a lot of us would probably agree on that. Actually, I got a new tweet up here on Aston Martin just to support your opinion there about having the best test session there. Just coming from Albert Fabrega, who is in the pit lane currently. Alonso's Aston Martin race simulation confirms low degradation and good pace. The step forward is clear. So, ladies and gentlemen, looks like Fernando Alonso might have finally made the right move into Formula One, or excuse me, the right Formula One team at the right time. So yeah, for Aston Martin confirmed that they are definitely a step forward. So I would say, yeah, I think for me, the team who had the best test probably has to be Red Bull, because they've done a really good, solid, healthy number of laps, no issues. And in terms of just visually looking at the car on track, it is the best of the lot that we've seen so far, especially in the hands of Verstappen. We really didn't see any spins I mean, if you remember last year in testing, Verstappen actually had, and Perez as well, had a few spins. But this season, the car just looks so planted, so under control, and the drivers are just at one with it, especially Verstappen. So I think they've had the best test because they're just kind of confirmed they built on what they achieved last season. and they don't seem like they got hurt too much by the penalties that they faced for the cost cap breach. So I'd say Red Bull are my winners, as well as Aston Martin for sure. I'd agree with you on that, Shaker. That's an obvious one. Some other winners, maybe some secondary winners. I'd put Williams in there too, just because of the consistent error-free running that they've done so far. Difficult to tell where their car is going to land. I don't expect them to be any faster than, ninth place this season, unfortunately. But I think just positive altogether that they've run, north of 200, 250 laps with no issues whatsoever. So they'd be another winner of mine. And then looking at the loser side of it, certainly McLaren. I think that's an obvious one for sure. I think McLaren, looking at it from that perspective, is had quite probably the worst out of all the teams in terms of their testing. I would also put Mercedes in that loser category as well, because they were one of only a few teams to have a significant mechanical failure yesterday with George Russell. That really limited their running. And also, they've had an okay test, but I think it's just obvious that their car is not a significant improvement as they would have expected over the W13. So I'll put Mercedes in that category as well as my two losers. But certainly I think the clear one is McLaren. They've probably been struggling the most.
I was the reason I debated it so much was I was also considering Haas as one too, as like is very good for, not best but good. They had really good overall testing.
Yeah, I think you can kind of there's a secondary category there where it's just like a neutral category. I'd put Alpine in there, for example. Haas is another one, and AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri probably I put in there, but they're kind of one of the slower teams.
I'd say they're probably at the bottom of the neutral, just like edging, worst, because they had good turnouts, but it's not kind of what I expected from AlphaTauri. I was expecting a little bit more.
Yeah, and just from Mirko's analysis too, he was saying that their race pace kind of looks quite off from the rest of them. And Alfa Romeo, another team that you can kind of throw in that neutral category as well, had a good test, but unfortunately had some reliability problems again that crept up yesterday and this morning as well. So that's kind of a negative for them. But you guys in the chat, Michael says McLaren worst. That's his vote. Yeah, so we agree with you on that one. Jimmy Keller says best Max Verstappen, worst Lando Norris. Okay, so we'll go more for drivers specifically on that one. I would agree with Verstappen on that regard. And Michael once again saying Aston looking good, but Red Bull seems good as well. Yeah, I think so far right now Red Bull is the team to beat. But it'll be interesting to see where Ferrari is too. They could be very, very close behind. Red Bull concerned about Ferrari's straight line speed and their power unit. So Tsunoda is just circling around the final corner at the moment on the C4 tire, the soft compound, but he is not going any quicker at the moment, so he looks like he might be doing a longer run on a softer compound. Oh, we got some trackside videos here. Let's see if we can play this one. Haven't had one in a while. So this is the AlphaTauri of Yuki Tsunoda just 24 minutes ago on his runs trackside. Let's just have a listen. Got the lovely sound of the Honda power unit. Always enjoy listening to trackside shots there.
Alpha Sophist asks, why is everyone doing C4 and 5 if you're not allowed to use it in the race? That's a good question.
Is he asking, are you saying in terms of like a race tire? Let me just read here. Why is everyone doing C4 or 5?
It'll be loud in qualifying.
Well, hold on. Let me see what the tire allocation is for the first race in Bahrain. I think it's the middle range that they're bringing to Bahrain. I think it's the C3, the C4, and the C5 for the first race of the season. I think maybe what he means is in terms of using the soft compound tire as a race tire. Certainly you would be allowed to use it if you would like to, but most teams opt to obviously use one of the two harder compounds, especially now that you don't have to start on the tire that you qualify on in Q2. Here we go. So we've got... All right, so here are the tire choices. They've actually announced it for the first 3 races of the season. And okay, I understand what the question now, because we only have the C1, the C2, and the C3 that is at the disposal of for the first race in Bahrain. So the red soft being the C3, the yellow medium being the C2, and the white hard being the C1. And actually just curious to see what it is for the other 2 races as well. So I think they've gone a step harder from last season, if I remember correctly. So Saudi Arabia tire selection, we have the C2, the C3, and the C4. And then for the Australian Grand Prix, we have all the same thing, C2, C3, and C4. So I think the reason why the teams would be even trying out those C4 and C5 tires is obviously they're going to be using them in future races as well, but it's just an idea just to get a sense of where their pace is on a very soft compound tire and on lighter fuel as well. So that's they want to put the car through the paces. That's why Pirelli has the entire range of compounds available for testing, all the way from the C0, which is a very hard tire, all the way up until the C5. So although they won't be using it in Bahrain next week, it gives them a good read on the data for future races as well. And you're just seeing that a lot of Floviz paint on the halo of Sergio Perez's car. So I guess I wonder if they're trialing out a new halo on that Red Bull.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, they're not going to be able to try those out, and if they don't do the testing now, come to race 4, and teams realize they can't get those tires up to deg, they're going to have issues. So best to find out now when it's late in the race, once they've done all their testing for the first 3 races already. So.
Yeah, and like I said before, it's important to know how the car behaves on a really soft compound tire as well, and just to get a sense of the true pace of the car, because they hadn't run these cars really much in before testing, and only 3 days of testing as well. So they want to get as much data as possible, like you said there. So yeah, but confirmation there: C1, C2, and C3 are the tires for the first race of the season. We do have a virtual safety car period out right now, which is from the FIA most likely. They've done these tests at the end of every session for the most part. So maybe I was wrong then about my Fernando Alonso prediction. It looks like Perez might be keeping his P1 spot. We got another comment here from Joseph, who says, based on Red Bull's test form, we have to prepare ourselves to enjoy the interesting battles in the midfield. Yeah, I know. I hope that we'll get a Ferrari and a Ferrari Red Bull battle at the championship. I mean, could you imagine if the season last year would have went the way that it started, as close as it was in those first 3 to 4 races? I hope it's not another runaway season for Verstappen and Red Bull, because I know we've only had 2 seasons of Red Bull winning a championship, but we want a close championship. We don't want another domination like we had last season. The midfield is always interesting, that's for sure. I think it's going to be especially close between Aston Martin and Alpine, and then see where McLaren ends up in that situation as well. But Alfa Romeo could be the surprise team. I think Alfa had a really good package last year. It's just that reliability really screwed them over, and I'm hoping that they got that fixed. So yeah, I guess we'll have to watch some of that midfield action.
Yeah, I'm gonna go as honestly as my team to watch this season. I'm very curious to see where Alpha ends up landing, because they're just Bottas is a great driver, and they seem to kind of be all over the place. And yeah, very interested to see that.
Yeah, not a bad test for Alfa Romeo. I mean, you have Bottas sitting P3 right now, so there's definitely pace in that C43. Also have to keep in mind that Ferrari has done a lot of improvements in terms of the reliability of the power unit, and that has you're not allowed to improve your engine because there is the engine freeze currently, so you're not allowed to improve it in terms of performance, but you can make adjustments as long as those adjustments are geared toward reliability and safety fixes. So that has seemed to help Ferrari because they are the quickest in the top speed traps in testing in 2023. And you're seeing that pay off because you have 3 Ferrari power unit cars in the top 5 right now. So I think Alfa Romeo could end up being maybe fighting in the top 5 for the championship if the reliability is good. But the midfield is always exciting and it's always interesting. It's just that naturally we focus on the front of the grid, of course.
Yeah, and that comes from the broadcast too. There's a lot of time to miss the mid-table, what's going on in the back markers too, because obviously we only see what's going up front.
Yep. So we've got, how much time do we have here? Less than, almost creeping up on 10 minutes to go, guys, in 2023 testing. Of course, after this, I will be ending the stream with Shaker and you guys, and then I'll be recording a little bit of a debrief show later on, and then that will do it for the testing streams. Then hopefully we'll get a little bit time off on Sunday and maybe Monday as well, but who knows? And preparations will begin for the first race of the season. I guess that's the other thing, Shaker, I almost forgot. We'll have to discuss with you and Tyler's. We should be doing a season preview as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty much free next week, and then the weekend afterwards is when I leave for BC. So
cool, awesome. Yeah, we'll talk about it after the show, and tomorrow we'll see what Tyler is up to as well. It'd be good to get you guys a preview out before the first race next season and get our official predictions out there in the world. I'm sure we're going to have a lot to say, especially after testing. Not seeing anything. This comment is okay. So we got another one from Joseph here. Aston could be the new McLaren, top of the midfield. They sure can be, and all rumors and even some of the experts are pointing to the fact that Aston Martin could be there for 4th place, and even, I've said this before too, could be challenging Mercedes in the first few races of the season. That's how good some people think that they can be. And just keep in mind, Fernando Alonso at the wheel of the AMR 23, so certainly possible. Paranoid again is saying, not seeing anything, but as Mercedes has continued with the zero pod, have they had any porpoising problems in testing? No, they actually haven't, Paranoid, and that is the positive for Mercedes, is this W14 has really seen little to no porpoising issues so far in the 3 days of testing, which is great. Drivers Lewis Hamilton and George Russell reporting that the car is more stable to drive and is more stability at the rear as well, which obviously helps the drivers considerably, but no porpoising, which is great. And we haven't seen virtually none from what I've seen visually out of the Mercedes. And another one here from Alpha Sophist. Why is Mercedes running high downforce? That's a good question. They do have a pretty thick wing on the rear of that Mercedes as well. The only thing I could really think of is maybe just the fact that they were struggling for grip in some of the Sector 2 and 3, where you obviously need a little bit more higher downforce, and they're just not able to produce as much mechanical grip as Red Bull, for example, or even Ferrari, who was able to run a much slimmer rear wing. But it all depends on the different types of programs that they're testing as well. And maybe Mercedes hoping that they have enough engine power to compensate for the bigger rear wing. But who knows? We'll have to see what type of rear wing they turn up with next week when we go to the race.
Right, getting to see a formation lap. Nice.
Oh yeah? Yeah, they're doing practice starts, right? So it looks like they're going to send all the cars out onto the track right now. So yeah, that's probably going to do it, guys, in terms of new times being put up on the board. So for those of you in the chat that predicted Perez is going to keep his spot, well done. I wish I'd have a prize for you, but I don't at the moment. So if you guys aren't watching the F1 live stream right now, you have an Alpha Tauri leading the pack, followed by a McLaren, a Red Bull, an Alpha, and a Mercedes. Imagine if that is how the race will start next Sunday. In the meantime, while we wait for the cars to queue up, more comments from Joseph and Alpha. Joseph says, would be great to see again Alonso on the podium, and the first from Hulkenberg. Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be great for Nico Hulkenberg to finally get his first podium in his return to Formula One, and also maybe even get the first podium for Haas F1? That would be quite interesting, and we got a little bit of almost like a race going on here. This is interesting.
Interesting to watch.
Down to turn one, we have Bottas. Oh, he sends it on the inside of Lando Norris. Lando Norris pulling over. Lewis Hamilton goes through.
Crash
Yeah. Yuki Tsunoda leads, followed by Sergio Perez, Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, and the Aston Martin closing on his former teammate. We go on board with the Alfa Romeo, chasing down the Red Bull. What scenes here in Bahrain in 2023 winter testing is, oh my god, Valtteri Bottas sends it down on the inside of Sergio Perez. Valtteri Bottas is up into P2. I've never seen this before in testing. Oh, Perez is slowing down. Does he have an issue?
I mean, it's kind of interesting. There's only 8 cars on the grid. They have so much space.
Yeah.
There's 7 cars on the grid, yeah.
That was exciting. Here we go. Yeah, we got a replay here. Look at that. The Alfa Romeo. Valtteri Bottas was getting super racy there. Look at that. Sends it on the inside. Almost got Sergio Perez as well. Had to be careful there. Lando Norris backed out. He's just like, no, we can't afford any damage.
My car's not ready for this.
Yeah. That slips. Yeah, look, I mean, Bottas was thinking about it too. He was thinking about sending it on the inside of Perez as well, but decided better of it. I just saw the comment from Michael. He says, it would be cool if Bottas was actually this competitive during the race. Yeah.
Got a new mustache, man. You never know.
Yeah, he's still rocking the mullet too. Absolute scenes on the final 10 minutes of winter testing. If you guys don't actually have the F1 feed up in front of you, this is what it looked like here while we were doing our little commentary there. But yeah, full-on race. I guess Yuki Tsunoda is the winner. So just a couple of practice starts here. I wonder if they'll get any more afterwards. But just 3 minutes remaining here, guys. So we are almost at the end of winter testing for 2023.
Oh, testing a red flag.
You know, it's interesting because I was reading an article before I came on here that there was somebody was suggesting that a lot of fans were complaining that because testing is now televised, that it's too boring and there's not enough action. And I was like, that's kind of a stupid thing to say because it's testing. I mean, what more do you want? What more can you expect? I think I'm just happy to see F1 cars back on the track, but I wonder if that was something new that they just wanted to put in there. It's like let's have a little mock race at the end of the test.
I mean, they are race car drivers. If you're lined up on the grid like that, who isn't going to want to, have a little bit of a race?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's in their DNA, right? Well, if you think about it, in F1 testing, it's kind of the one thing they haven't tested, right, is actually the racing, the overtaking. All right, just going to catch up on some of the questions and comments here. Alpha asks, what do you think about the long run pace? I think he's referring to Mercedes. Long run pace was okay for Mercedes, actually, but in terms of putting them in the ranking, they would be the third fastest, certainly behind Ferrari and Red Bull, of course, as well. So long run pace from Aston Martin was very strong too. So I think that they're actually in a fight there with Mercedes, at least in the very beginning of the season. But long run pace was looking okay for Mercedes, but nothing too special. Michael says, would be cool if Bottas was actually this. Yes, we already read that comment. Alpha, yep, that's another same comment as well. Michael says, it feels like Bottas has become one of the fan favorites since he was kicked from Mercedes. Yeah, I guess so. He's got a pretty good fan base, does Valtteri Bottas. What would you say about that?
I disagree. I think I in terms of like he's become a fan favorite since he left Mercedes. I think people always liked and respected Bottas. And we always knew he was a secondary driver at Mercedes, but we had a lot of talent. So it's nice to see him kind of go off on his own and be able to prove himself a little bit more, which I like to see. But I think he's always been a fan favorite, my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think he has gotten a lot of fans in the past couple of seasons of F1, and maybe more since he moved from Mercedes now that he's at Alpha. So yeah, but he's a very likable driver, and people have always respected him and also enjoyed him off track as well. He's kind of been showing a little bit more personality as of late. I guess as much personality as Finnish people can show.
I mean, we'll never forget, Valtteri. It's James.
Mm-hmm.
It's Valtteri. He's always got that personality and a little bit of edge, which I like to see in a driver. And I think he's just got more of it now since he's left Alpha. He's allowed to do more and be more of a personable driver, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
None of the Lewis.
Yeah, and Joseph saying, anybody seen Bottas overtake any car ever? He just did. He just did in testing. Oh, we got team radio from Magnus. Let's see.
Excellent work. Yeah, good effort, guys.
Oh, finally got some team radio. Haven't seen much of it yet, but there you go. All right, guys, checkered flag has dropped. We are currently at 0 for the session time. Session 2 is officially over. That means that F1 testing is officially over for 2023. We'll be here for another 5 minutes or so, and then we'll sign off and continue on with the rest of our coverage. But summarizing the day 3 action, Sergio Perez, the fastest time today, but also in testing as well. 133 laps on the board for the Mexican. Red Bull has certainly laid down the gauntlet in these 3 days in Bahrain. Lewis Hamilton, a solid effort though, finishing in second place with his time, 65 laps in this PM session. Valtteri Bottas P3 in the Alfa Romeo, 131 laps on the board. Charles Leclerc for Ferrari this morning, completing 67 laps. He had a P4 in the end on that soft tire. His teammate Carlos Sainz right behind, 76 laps completed in the PM session. Yuki Tsunoda from this morning, finishing in 6th place, Yuki Tsunoda from this afternoon in 6th place. Kevin Magnussen for Haas in 7th, 95 laps done on the board in this PM session. Very good effort from him. George Russell in the Mercedes, P8. Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, doing plenty of long run work. Long run pace looking great for Aston Martin, 80 laps on the board. He's in 9th. Felipe Drugovich, his teammate for now, finishing in 10th. Lando Norris and McLaren, not very many laps running in this PM session, only 37 laps completed. Good enough for 11th. Pierre Gasly, P12 at the end of the day with 56 laps on the board. Alex Albon from Williams, 136 laps done for the day, the most out of any driver on day 3. Esteban Ocon in 14th, 76 laps done. Nico Hulkenberg for Haas in 15th. Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, also few laps done as well, 44 for the total. And Nick De Vries, P17, the slowest out of any of the drivers today, 87 laps on the board. And just going to check out another comment from Michael. Yep, thank you, Joseph. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for joining the stream. You're very welcome, and we hope to see you on our channel in the future. And we'll address this last question from Michael. Do you think Stroll will be fit to race next week? Honestly, if I had to bet money on it, I would say he's probably not going to be. I think he's got a broken wrist and maybe even has like 2 broken wrists, so he's most likely not driving next week.
Broken wrist usually, or broken anything, usually you mean you're out for anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, depending on the injury. wrist. You need it to drive.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Certainly for this sport, you definitely need your hands the most. So I guess, guys, if you don't have any final questions or comments, we will be signing off. If you guys are still sticking around, though, pay attention to the Backmarkers F1 Show channel, because in the next 2 hours or so, you should be seeing the Day 3 testing debrief show, and that might be a little bit longer because we'll just recap all 3 days of the action, and we'll post that a little bit later on into the channel. If you guys are new to these streams or just new to the channel in general, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to everybody who's been joining us these last 3 days. Please subscribe to the channel, enable those notifications as well. Make sure you click all notifications so that you can get every single latest Backmarkers F1 Show video delivered straight to your telephone. And that way you can never miss any comment or excuse me, any video that we post. Us, in terms of Shaker and Tyler McDonald, they will be joining me for the Backmarkers F1 Show at some point in the next 7 days as we drop our season preview for 2023. And I will be coming out with the Bahrain Grand Prix preview mid to end of next week. So that should be pretty exciting. And yeah, that's what's coming up on the channel. And we see the calendar on screen right now for us. March 3rd to 5th, the Bahrain Grand Prix, the first round of the 2023 World Championship. Shaker, I'll leave any final parting thoughts for you before we sign off.
I have nothing more to say, but I'm sure you guys are excited as we are for next week and see how it all unfolds after all that testing that we just watched. So I'm just really excited. You know, see what happens. Hopefully we get to do some more of these live streams, and yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm hoping we'll be doing more qualifying watch-alongs in 2023, but we'll keep you guys updated. Follow us on social media as well. We're on Twitter, guys, BMF1_show. We post a lot of updates there, so follow us there. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you, Michael, Paranoid, Joseph, and everybody else that joined us. We had a really great stream in this PM session. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you to Mirko as well from F1 Data Analysis for giving us excellent analysis and expertise for over an hour earlier on the show. So we really do appreciate it. Thank you very much, guys. We can't thank you enough. We couldn't do it without your support. And we hope to see you guys again soon. Enjoy the action from Formula One. It's officially back and full speed ahead for the 2023 season. For Shaker Barty, I'm Chris Cato, and we'll see you again soon. Take care, guys.